win that ultimate thing, right?
Got you.
So that's the analogy I like to use. But yeah, again, if you're able to answer the when, the why, the what, the who, the where, and the how very specifically and clearly, you will also easily be able to articulate what your goals are for your project and what the objectives are.
Got you.
And so this slide here too is, if anyone here has ever taken a communications or marketing or PR course, you probably heard this, that your goals and objectives should be SMART being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely.
Right.
That's something to keep in mind. One other thing I want to say here as I'm moving through this presentation, I can send this presentation to everyone. They can keep this. You can keep this presentation and refer to it as. So I don't know if it's better if I send it to you and you disseminate it to the group, Joel.
You can send it to me. So everyone that's on, as long as you've registered and we have your email address, what I can do is I'll send this out to everyone here. This slideshow. So you'll have the full notes, everything that Kevin's has been talking about. You'll have that accessible to you.
Yeah. The next step after you've done all that work about, answering those questions for yourself is to identify funding opportunities.
So hang on, Kevin, your approach is basically, based on what I heard you say, we haven't even looked at a grant yet.
No. No. You don't necessarily have to move like that in those kind of ways, but I just find
you move though. That's an OG move right there. You're saying I'm ready, I'm ready to go. I've written it out, who, what, when, where, why, how. I've thought this thing through. I'm ready to go. I got my artist statement. I got everything ready to go. I'm good to go. And then we go to Google.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, you don't have to follow that, right? You can find whatever methodology works best for you, whatever you're comfortable with. Everyone's got a different learning style. People, communicate differently. But I just think it's helpful to, when you start your search, already kind of know what it is you want to do and how you want to accomplish it.
I actually had a question too, Kevin, because I don't know if TAC's into this. I know some funders are starting to get into this, where they're looking at different ways of submitting. So because not everybody is like a computer right person. Some people would be like, honestly, I would rather just create a video, talk about what I want to do, etc. So I don't know, has TAC been looking into that, or do you guys have anything like that going on? Or I know some funders do.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that yet. That is something we are thinking about doing. I don't know what is going to ultimately come of this, but before 2016, until 2016, all applications, and this was before I was at Toronto Arts Council.
Yeah,
everything was done by paper. Like, you had to print out your applications.
Oh wow, paper, literally.
Your paper applications. You could print it out and hand deliver it, mail it, whatever.
Gotcha.
But you just had to get it there by the deadline.
Right.
And then so in 2016, TAC switched to this online platform we have now.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. So I think, I would imagine that, within, a couple of years, there might be another shift. There might be multiple, avenues, people to explore.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking out for that because, I know some people, as you said, everybody has a different style, and some people would rather, some people will allow you to record an idea of what you're doing, as long as you answer the questions and all of that. So yeah, we'll stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So yeah, once you know what you want to do, hit the internet. So I am significantly older than most of the folks in this presentation. I'm just going to assume that.
How do you know that? There's a lot of cameras off, man.
I don't know. I'm just assuming, and I'm looking at your beard, Joel. You don't have any gray hair. I got all this gray in my beard. So
I hear you.
Right. when when I was
Yeah, that was me.
No, good to see you.
when I was starting out, and when I was writing grants for myself, the Google wasn't really a thing.
Okay.
So finding out about funding opportunities, I frankly had never heard about like Toronto Arts Council until, I don't know, like I was already like doing shows and being an artist before I'd never even heard of it,
Right.
right?
Real.
But nowadays you can just hit the internet,
Nice.
and you know
But
uh
you know what's crazy though, Kevin? Like, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. Like, we've been finding out that a lot of musicians are just not, at least in our community, like the community that we've been working with, like a lot of people are not even really aware of what's out there. Like, they hear about grants, but like if you, I would be really interested. Like, even for, I'm super curious if you guys already knew about TAC before this meeting, just like let us know in the comments, just for my own sake. I want to know. But like what we've been hearing a lot about, like people that again haven't always heard about these opportunities.
yeah, and we're trying to change that. We're actively trying to change that, but it's a sad reality. So yeah, and the thing too about the when I say use the internet, if you um you know you find the Toronto Arts Council website. Our website is going to be changing soon, but it's not a very good website. But you go on there, and we have resources and links to other funding opportunities. So it's just a good way to gather information about what's out there. If you find one funder, chances are it'll also lead you to other funding opportunities.
Right.
Right. I also think networking is the other thing I talk about too, in terms of finding out about funding opportunities. If you know someone, you're out somewhere, don't hesitate to talk about what you're doing.
Right.
You're a musician, own that. I know a lot of artists, and myself included. Sometimes you get a little modest, humble. You don't want to talk about your artistry.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
a little scared to talk about it. Talk about it.
Yeah.
You'll find other people doing similar things, and find out what they did to get their funding.
Right. Right.
That's yeah. So let's you've done all that, whether it's the internet research, whether it's networking, whether it's coming to sessions like this and finding out about funding opportunities. How do you choose the ones that work well for you? So if you've done the kind of stuff and put in the work that I mentioned in step one about going through asking yourself those questions and determining your goals and objectives, you'll be able to go to Toronto Arts Council website and easily determine which funding program you should be applying to. When you choose that funding program, the next step there is to really read those program guidelines carefully.
Right.
Every funding program has its own set of guidelines. And when you read those guidelines, it'll help you find out what are the priorities of that specific funding program. And then you'll be able to align your vision with the vision, and the priorities of this funding program.
Right.
So when you're reading those guidelines, it will be stuff like, what are the eligibility requirements? So, for TAC, I mentioned things like, you got to be a Toronto-based artist. You have to, if it's an event-based activity, it has to be taking place in Toronto.
Okay.
But the guidelines also will let you know how your application is going to be evaluated, and it'll also let you know when's the deadline to apply.
Right. And that's the other thing I was going to ask you about, because as I don't know about like other people, I know as you showed us all the different programs, and there's like multiple deadlines in a year. So like it could be hard just to keep track of like like all of that, right? Because like it could be, to be honest, one of the things you said about like signing up and then seeing like that, to me, that might be like one of the best ways of knowing like just what's going on. Because like, to be honest, like your website, I've been on your website, it's great, but it has a lot of information, and like it's just like there's a lot of dead like Shamar's like facts.
It's going to be changing. We recognize it. Like it's
overwhelming.
So check our new website. I think is going to be ready by the summer.
Okay.
But maybe even a little sooner. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Step 4. Now this might be, I've given you a lot of information already, but this might be the single most important thing you can do.
Okay.
'Cause like when in doubt, find a contact name and contact that person. Now, let me also give you a little bit of to be honest, this is very TAC specific.
Okay.
Other arts funders, like let's say there's, because there's Toronto Arts Council, there's Ontario Arts Council, there's Canada Council for the Arts. So those are the major arts funders. But then there's things like Factor.
Right.
There's, various private foundations. There's a Toronto Foundation. There's lots of funders out there.
Right.
It's not the same across the board in terms of accessibility. At TAC, the program managers there, we are very accessible. Like if you email or call a program manager, chance like we will get back to you.
Facts. Yeah.
Canada Council for the Arts, it's not, I can't speak for them, but they're representing the whole of Canada. So it's harder for them to be responsive.
Right.
And when they are responsive, definitely not as quickly as we can be.
Right.
Right. But I would still say it's important if there's a contact name there. If you go on the website for a specific funding program and they list the contact person, call them, email them.
Kevin, I love that you said that, man, because like I remember back in the day when I was working for like a charity way back in the day, and like, older charity that's been around for a while, but like the sentiment that we got like as young staff just coming up was that like you couldn't really contact funders. Like it's like, oh no, like like fund, like you have to. So like just hearing you like say like, listen, like there are people like send them an email, give them a call, like connect with somebody. That's so real, because like it really helps to demystify some of this, right? Like just even if you don't even have a full idea or you're trying to work through, like just to be able to call somebody and say, hey, like here's what I'm thinking. Is this a line? Like, am I wasting my time, right?
Yeah. So, because one of the things I think it's important for folks to understand, and again, I'm speaking very TAC specifically here.
Yeah.
Every program manager at TAC is an artist themselves or has, worked on the production side or something. So we know the struggle.
Gotcha.
Like we understand the perspectives you're coming from.
Right.
We've been there, done that. We know what you're going through. And I can speak for myself. I personally, like when someone calls me up with an idea. Yeah. And they're not sure about it, but it sounds good to me. And then maybe we have a conversation. I help walk them through that process.
Right.
If it might be 6 months down the road, it might be a year later. But if and when I see that person go through that process of developing an idea and then they apply and I see them get funded, there is nothing more rewarding than that. Like I feel like, I did my small part.
Yeah. For sure. That's huge. Does that happen? Like, has that happened before, Kevin, where you'll like talk to somebody and you see an idea like later on that gets funded and stuff? For sure.
Awesome. Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but it definitely has happened.
For real.
Yeah, so I just think it's important, when you're contacting the program manager, what do I have it saying here? I define our role here, that we're in charge of administering and coordinating the proposal evaluation process. We're the primary point of contact. We promote the funding opportunity in the community, and we sometimes supervise the jury or committee that makes the funding decision. So yeah, those are job description things, but I just think when I say this is the most important thing, because, like you were saying, Joel, when someone calls me and they're unsure about their idea,
Right.
Yes, you can read the program guidelines, but, people learn differently, people interpret things differently.
Right.
But if you talk to a program manager, like there's less room for confusion, and less likelihood of you potentially wasting your time.
Right. That's
right? Like, because if your project's not a good fit for a funding program, but you spend all this time putting together an application only to get a phone call from me and have me say, oh, actually, this isn't quite eligible or it doesn't align with our priorities, that's a waste of your time, right?
Right. You know what? It's funny you mentioned that, Kevin. Like, I had a quick story. Like, I remember one time we were applying for a grant. I think it was like a multi-year grant or something. I think it was like with a larger funder, like Trillium or something. And I remember we spent time on that application, like probably weeks. And you know what's funny about the situation? Because we were getting close to the deadline, I didn't reach out to talk to a program manager or whatever. And so we just met the deadline, got it in, etc. We eventually heard back about the project, found out we didn't get the funding. And then we signed up for like a feedback call, like to find out like, oh, what happened? Like, how can we learn from this? Because that, by the way, is something you should always do if you have the opportunity to, because you can learn from it. So anyway, we got the feedback call and the person was like, oh man, I wish you had like talked to me before because your project was amazing. It was great. The reason why you didn't get funding is because you applied for the wrong stream. And had you just simply put this same idea in this other stream, you probably would have gotten funded. I was like, right? So like, I definitely learned from that experience. And like now anytime there's a grant for anything, it's like, I don't even if it's a day that I found out and it's due today, I'm going to try and talk to somebody because like, it's just important.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think step 4 here, contact your program manager.
Yep.
Perhaps the most important thing in this presentation. Step 5, writing the grant. Grants are generally broken down, in a similar way across funders. There'll be a background information section, and all that answering all those who questions that I mentioned earlier, that helps and answering the background information. Project details, pretty much every grant application is going to have a project details section. Right. And, when you answered all those what, who, why, where, when you asked and answered all those questions of yourself, those answers you can just plug into the project details section. Because the project details are always broken. If it's again, when you're an independent or individual artist applying specifically just to do an album or something, it'll be a little different than this. But if it's a project involving lots of moving parts with multiple artists, all this is important. Who is involved? When will you complete this project? Where is it going to take place? Right. Sometimes facts and statistics can boost your application, but again, it depends on the kind of project you're applying for. The budget. I want to talk about the budget a second.
Yeah. Let's talk about the budget.
So the budget is, a good budget expresses or describes in financial terms how your resources will be allocated. So I want to talk about this point for a second. So, when I look at a budget and when the panelists look at a budget, it should totally match up with what you had talked about in the written portions of your application. Like it should be your application, your project reflected in financial terms, in the numerical terms. So, if you talk about you're going to spend 2 weeks, 14 days in the studio,
Right.
and you're paying, XYZ musicians,
Right.
you cannot submit a budget that says, it's going to cost you $3,000, because we will, at that point, the panelists know you're either not, you either actually don't know how these things cost, how
Right.
much these things cost, how these things work, and you don't actually have access to the type of studio, the type of
Right.
things necessary to execute this project.
Doing.
So things have to, it has to match up. It has to reflect, your budget has to reflect the realities that were expressed in your project description.
So question about that, Kevin, like what if somebody, like, as a good reference, like would it be a good idea for someone to, like, let's say there's a particular studio that they want to hit up or whatever, like would it be a good idea to actually call them, hit them up, find out what their rates are, and then like literally plug that into the budget?
Yeah,
That be like,
absolutely. While we're here speaking about budgets, I just want to say something else too, since we're talking about money. Often when people are putting together these budgets, particularly for these, in my experience, particularly for art funders, there's a tendency towards trying to, like, well, ideally, we would pay, we would pay $1,000 to this musician to come help out with this project. But you know what? Let's try to stretch it. Let's try to pay 3 musicians $333 instead of 1 musician $1,000, right? You get this idea of stretching the money. No. Pay artists what they're worth.
Right.
Pay yourself what you're worth.
Right.
It's that's another thing. It's also okay to put your own fees, your own artist fees in the budget.
Hey, are y'all hearing that? Hold on. One more, run that back. Run that back one more time, Kevin. Because I want to make sure folks are hearing. That's key.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Pay
one more time.
yourself.
Y'all hear that? Pay yourself. Make sure you have your own artist fees. Don't be hiring out everything, and you're working too. Your work costs something. Come on.
Absolutely.
I hear you, Adam. Talk to us.
I'm here to listen, man. I'm here to listen.
Yeah, no, I just find a lot of artists make that mistake, particularly first time out, that they think that the arts funders are trying to, like, see how far you can stretch the money.
Right.
No, we are, Toronto Arts Council and all the arts funders are committed to seeing artists get paid and get paid what they're worth, being able to make a living as artists. Right. And we can't do that if we continue to undervalue ourselves.
That's true, man.
Right? So pay yourself what you're worth, pay the other artists involved what they're worth.
Thank you.
And always, the second point here about having a balanced budget with where your revenues are equal to your expenses. There are potentially some funding situations you're going to come across where this is less important a point, but for funders like Toronto Arts Council, if you say that it's, if you put revenues of $30,000 to execute a project, you need to show $30,000 in expenses.
Right.
Right. This final section here about evaluation. So something to think about. How will you know your project is a success, and how will you measure that? And again, it's a little bit less important for things that are creation focused. But, it's still something to think about. How will you know that your project is a successful project? Support material. Now, aside from contacting your program manager, this might be the next most important thing to think about. Most funding programs, arts funding programs, are going to require you to provide support material. Now, support material is any kind of additional item or document that speaks to your, this here is, what's written here is for, like, community engaged work, but so kind of ignore what's written there and just listen to what I say. the support material is going to, any item that you provide that speaks to your artistry, like as individual artists and you're applying for these funding programs, the support material needs to speak to the quality of your art. And you want to put your best foot forward. So if you're applying for, like, even if you're applying for doing a demo,
Right.
don't submit the demo that you recorded in your bathroom with your handheld recorder. Unless, of course, you are just so dope that that's the dopest sounded handheld recording ever made.
Right.
Like, provide, like, at every stage, so if it's at the demo stage, provide a support material, the best demo example you can.
Gotcha.
You want because
them.
Yeah, because they need to hear it. If it's a demo, they need to hear it and say, yeah, this is good. I can see the potential for what this is going to become. This person is talented. This is quality music, whatever. Like, you need to be able to demonstrate that.
Got you.
Yeah, so, I have these 2 slides here. They're my concluding remarks. The first one is about if you're successful and if you weren't successful. But if you've gone through this whole thing now, you've completed your application, you've submitted your grant, it's been evaluated. First thing I want to say to you is that whether you get the money or not, particularly if it's your first time doing a grant, you should, kind of pat yourself on the back. These things are often intimidating, unfortunately, and not always the easiest thing to do. Congratulate yourself. Feel good about it. But if your application is successful, you will need to fulfill all the grant requirements. So, if you say
a little bit,
if you say you're going to record an album, and we give you, $10,000 towards this album, you need to get that done. Now, TAC, we from the date of notification, so the date that you're notified that you've received the grant, we give applicants 2 years to finish their project.
Okay.
Right. So you have 2 years to finish your project.
Wow.
So fulfill all those requirements. That, if it's an album, finish your album. You'll have to then report on that. Mm-hmm. And reporting process in that, case will involve filling out a report, which is also available on our online platform. And essentially, we just ask you to tell us what happened, what you did with the money. And if it's an album or a demo, you just tell us, yeah, I recorded this demo. We will ask, sometimes in some cases, for support materials. So if you completed a demo, completed an album, maybe send us a little something.
Yeah.
You will also have to acknowledge funders on your material. So if you're if you're doing promo related to, if you're doing an event, for example, put our logo on stuff. If you're recording an album, you can download our TAC logo and put our logo on there and thank us for your support.
Yeah.
Also keep funders in the loop in what you're doing. I love to receive invitations to events and stuff. I'm not always able to go to stuff, but I like to go to events. I like to keep stay in the loop on what's happening. I like to see what's happening with the projects and the artists that get funded through this, through the programs that I manage. Now, if you didn't get the money, I still think you should feel, you're going to be disappointed, no doubt. But writing a grant proposal is not easy. I think this point here, the second point about following up with the program manager to find out why you didn't receive money, is really important. Now, not every funding program does provide feedback, but Joel mentioned this earlier. And if you can get feedback, and this is actually true even if you did get the grant, I still think it's important to get the feedback, hear what the panel had to say about your project and about your application, because this information will help you writing grants moving forward. And that, you know, so,
No, that's actually really huge, Kevin, because we talked a little bit about that earlier, but like just the idea of, like, in a sense, I almost look at that as a win, because like, although you may not have gotten the grant or whatever this time around, it's like, if you had a chance to get like feedback and like learn how you can actually be better for next time, you know, that's a life learning, like that's a life lesson that you're bringing with you, right? And the other thing I was going to add to that as well was just this, like, sometimes one funder's yes, it might be another, or one funder's no might be another funder's yes. So like, before you like throw the whole application, you've been working weeks on this thing and you just give up and like, no, like, you know, like you have a body of work. Like, if you really spent time on it and it's good, then it's like you still have a baby that you can nurture and, like, you know, try to improve and maybe pitch it to another funder, and who knows what could happen, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, so that's just some nuggets there, but no, that's great what you mentioned, man.
yeah, so, you know, got some final grant writing tips here. You know, these 7 things here that I guess in some ways sum up everything. You know, 1, read the guidelines carefully. 2, contact your program manager.
Yep.
3, give yourself adequate time. You know, it takes a lot of time to do this proposal properly, or it can take a lot of time, particularly your first time out. You know, 4, you know, I was mentioning earlier that the applications are done on an online platform. So it is important that when you're doing the application, though, I would suggest you do it like on a separate, like, Word file or something.
Listen to this, man, y'all.
You know, if a system crashes and you lose all your work, yeah, it's not good for you.
Hey, listen to what highlight what is that, number 4?
I would cry.
Highlight. It's happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be doing the grant on that. Like I, as you said, copy and paste when you're done, but to write it all on there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I've actually, those last 2 about giving yourself adequate time and the drafting and the editing and the separate document, I've broken those rules, and I did them once simultaneously, and it came back to bite me where the system crashed. It was last minute. All these things. I lost my work.
Yep.
And what made it worse is it was a big life lesson, because I was writing this grant on behalf of somebody else.
Oh wow.
So I felt it's one thing to mess up, and I just messed myself up.
Oh.
Right? But messing somebody else's stuff up. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, tip number 5: use clear and direct language. Tip number 6: get feedback if available. Yeah. And number 7: follow instructions, complete all the fields in the application, and triple check that grant to make sure you've got everything in there. Yeah, that's it. This is how you can reach me, but we're gonna send those, you know, I'm gonna send it to Joel, and Joel's gonna send it to you. You can keep this presentation. And I imagine some of you may or may not have any interest in the Creative Communities program. You might want to find out more, hit me up. But if you just want to connect with me and have me connect you with another program manager, you want to ask me questions, feel free.
So Kevin, this is great, man. Thank you so much. So before we're going to open it up for questions, because I hope folks have some questions. But before we do that, just really quickly, I know I noticed throughout the presentation, like, I know you would talk about the music program, and then like you are technically over the Creative Communities program. And so can you kind of just talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think we actually have applied for Creative Communities program before. Past, and I think we've been able to do stuff with music. So maybe just kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So, Toronto Arts Council exists to fund the production, presentation, and creation of art throughout the city of Toronto, right? So, all those art discipline programs I mentioned earlier, so, dance, literary, and visual media, theater, music, whatever,
Right.
you know, those programs fund the production, presentation, creation of arts within their specific discipline.
Got you.
Now, creative communities, what separates this program from other funding programs is that to be eligible, yes, you got to be producing, presenting, or creating art, but there has to be a kind of co-creative process between the professional artists involved
Gotcha.
and communities they're working with. Now, it could be co-creative, could be collaboration, could be skill development. So
Right.
Joel, you mentioned the fact that you've applied before, and it's yes. So
Yeah.
if you've got an idea to do a workshop series, Creative Communities is the portfolio for you. If you're working in maybe a kind of very culturally specific or ethnocultural art form, let's say you're doing West African dance, you're doing Afro-Brazilian drumming, you're doing South Asian dance, South Asian music, and you want to do some workshops or some kind of like skill development for people working in that specific genre or discipline, you can apply for the Creative Communities Fund. If anything along those lines, anything where professional artists are collaborating with community or offering skill development or co-creation, that's a Creative Communities project, and you can apply and get some money to do it.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. So hopefully that's clear. So like I think for our project we had done something where it was like we had a professional. Actually, Adam's here. Adam was one of the artists that we were working with. We had our music program where we were actually doing homework help and then like some actual music creation and
Right.
some other elements. So it was really cool because we actually were able to teach community members like how to do music as well. So there was definitely that community aspect that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's great. So the floor, I know we're actually doing pretty good for time. We have some time for some questions. So folks, it doesn't really get any better than this. We have Kevin Reigh here. He's a man, the inside guy from TAC. He's been breaking it down for us, taking it for us nice and slow and real bite sizes. So if there's anybody that has some questions specifically, maybe you want to ask maybe about a particular program or anything else, take advantage. It's not every day that we have 30 minutes with, to ask questions from one of the guys that is responsible for some of these applications. So take advantage. Oh, BW, you got a question? Go ahead. You can unmute yourself, or if you want to put it in the group chat. Either one it's up to you.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us. Have you been enjoying today's session?
Very much so.
Very glad to hear that. Go ahead. Why don't you ask your question?
So I'm thinking that since there are a ton of artists on here, that perhaps if people want to, they should actually try to enter their email addresses for potential collaborations.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. That's a great idea. So as Kevin mentioned, that's actually a very strategic thing to do as far as some of these applications, because sometimes you can only apply as an individual for certain streams, but then he mentioned, there are chances to collaborate with others. So everyone, feel free if you'd like to drop your information, if you'd like to share, as BW here has sort of proposed for some potential collaboration. Yeah, why don't you guys just say, maybe drop your name, maybe your email address. What are you doing? Are you a photographer? Are you I think mostly everyone here is probably connected to music in some way. But yeah, definitely, we love to see that kind of networking and stuff happening as well. That's great. So thanks for that, BW. And also, if you can put maybe a little bit about what you play, or so other people can know, aside from just the contact. It's like, oh, like here's somebody that does drums, or here's somebody that's a producer, or here's, like that kind of thing, just so people can kind of understand who they might want to be reaching out to. But that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Anyone else with any other questions for Kevin while we have him here? And feel free, like, even if you want to maybe like throw an idea out there, maybe like you may have an idea for like, I'm wondering, is this something that might be fundable? Throw it out there. Kevin's here. He can help you. He can kind of get us on the right path. And that might be something that's actually really helpful for others as well to learn.
Hey, Joel, thanks for that right there. I'm just wondering, a lot of us artists are like struggling for money and everything. And we know if we put our focus more on music or creations, like we can make a living. So it's like, if you guys have job opportunities in studios, or if you have people that need like those grunt workers in there where we could just get the base start, like a Puff Diddy lifestyle, and work your way up. That'd be amazing.
Okay, cool. So if I understand what you're saying here, Nathan, first of all, thanks for that feedback. That's wonderful. So if I understand what you're saying here, Nathan, you're saying like more opportunity, like if is what I'm hearing, like for more, if we can kind of forward any kind of opportunities that we might come across, like continue these kinds of things. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
Got you. Well, listen, if you signed up for the workshop today, for sure, there will be some follow-up in terms of like the information that we got today, and we'll definitely continue to send out. In fact, if we have some time, I'll tell you all about another workshop that we have next week that's actually focused on entrepreneurship specifically for musicians. So that's going to be really cool. So you definitely want to check that out. But yeah, we'll continue to connect everyone with opportunities as we hear about that, for sure.
Thank you.
No worries.
And I just wanted to add too, from a TAC perspective, we don't, what I might suggest is sign up. If you go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, when job opportunities, our community news, internships, those kind of things that come across our desk, we send them out that way through our newsletter. But, Joel was referencing what they're doing here next week. Sessions like this are so invaluable. So I would encourage you to come back to that, because that sounds dope, Joel. I'd want to check that out.
Right?
We're super thankful. Kevin, it's been great just hanging with you, man. We're learning. People are asking for more of these kinds of stuff. So that's always a good sign. Is there anyone else with any more questions before we sort of wrap up for tonight? Does anyone else have any questions for Kevin or anything else for that matter? Oh, here was one in the group. Someone sent this to me. Kevin, someone was asking about like just your journey, because like you mentioned, like, you ended up at TAC, you've been there for about 4 years, but you've actually been on a journey for a while into arts and doing some stuff. So like, I guess the question was like, how was like, how has, just sharing more about your journey, your background, and how it sort of ended up with you, being where you are today in terms of being a TAC project manager, and, and also someone who started off as an artist as well, right?
Yeah, so, it's strange. One of the things, when I first started at TAC, one of the things I would ask all the other program managers was how they got there.
Right.
And not a single one of them ever said, I always wanted to be a program manager, or I went to school and this was my,
right.
Everyone, like I said, it's overwhelmingly artists and people who worked in the arts. So it's, life kind of just took us in these different directions. And, for me personally, I didn't really have any thoughts. When I went away to university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. At one point, I thought I wanted to become a lawyer, but no.
I too. That's crazy.
And to be honest, I used to, have different creative inclinations, but my last year of university, the Black Students Association, I went to the University of Western Ontario. And so my last year at Western, the Black Students Association was, was doing a like they were doing they had an annual show called Soul for Black History Month, and so it was my last year there, and I don't know, for some reason I just decided it's my last year, I'm going to do something.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I wrote a 1-act play,
Okay.
and a couple, got a couple dudes in the community to come and perform this play, and I played one of the roles, and it was really well received, and people loved this play, and da 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 da.
Yeah, yeah.
But while I was at this show, there were some folks doing spoken word also at this show, and I remember thinking, oh, I could do that.
Right.
And so that's how I started specifically doing spoken word. And I came back to Toronto.
Wow.
And came back to Toronto, and I was working in a music. I was working in the music department at a chapters bookstore.
Okay.
And virtually everyone in that store, working in that particular store, was downtown, was an artist. And one of the musicians there gave me a guitar.
Hey, guitar, okay.
And so I started teaching myself how to play guitar.
Yeah.
And then I started to incorporate that into my performance. So my performance became something of like, there'd be some spoken word, a little bit of, a few chords, a little bit of, half-cooked singing,
Okay.
And so everything, so it just kind of, all of a sudden I started doing shows, and I met dancers. Dancers would say, hey, they thought my poetry was dope. Can I do something at the show? I started getting and then sometimes I'd get commissioned. People would pay me to write an original piece for this show.
Yeah. Pick up yourself, man. That's huge.
Yeah, thank you. And through that, I met this woman named Vivienne Scarlett. So doing these dance shows, this woman named Vivienne Scarlett, who worked at an organization called Dance Immersion. She was the founder of an organization called Dance Immersion. And I'd go to these dance shows, and I met Vivienne, and I decided to volunteer for Dance Immersion. And, when I went to talk with Vivienne, she asked me what I was good at, what I was interested in. And I said, I think I'm a pretty decent writer. She's like, all right, we'll get you doing some grant writing. Okay. And so she started walking me through so this is meeting Vivienne and working with Vivienne was when I first started hearing about grants.
Right.
And what grant writing was. Like I kind of heard about what grant writing was at that point, but I didn't know anything about all these funders and stuff. And working with Vivienne, so I started out volunteering, and then she hired me, she provided like a kind of mentorship that was invaluable to me.
Got you.
And, from there, I left, and so I was simultaneously working at Dance Immersion. That was a part-time gig. I had another part-time gig. As an artist, it's hard to, it's just a hard life.
I hear.
Okay, so I had that part-time gig. I had another part-time gig. Was doing shows, putting out my own material. And then the financial realities of life. I had to make some changes, and ended up working at the Canadian Music Reproduction Rights Agency.
Okay.
Which provided me with.
What were you doing there? Was it like are they the ones that do like all the your copyrights and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so it's like lots of music licensing. So things related to when you want to when music is used in commercials and TV shows. When it gets played on the radio, different things. So we collected those royalties and managed a little bit of the licensing process.
Okay.
Excuse me. So, so just working there gave me another lens to look at the creative industries.
Right.
And then after some time there, I started working at Unity Charity, which I'm not sure how familiar folks are with Unity Charity, but hip hop based charity in the city of Toronto.
Oh yeah.
And that experience.
Testament, those guys, yeah.
Oh yeah. So listen, you mentioned Testament. Listen, when so that period of my life, and I'm talking about doing shows in university, like I met Testament during that period of my life. So I know Testament from like way back.
Okay.
You know, something else I want to add to here. During this period when I was working at Dance Immersion, I was asked to sit on a committee at the Toronto Arts Council. It was the Community Arts Committee.
Okay.
So I served on that committee for 3 years.
Right.
And that was the first time I had met a program officer.
Okay.
And I actually remember at the time thinking, oh, that's cool. I wouldn't mind doing that one day.
Right.
But I never actually thought I would be in the position, a program officer or a program manager.
Right.
But, I mentioned all this stuff just, because the reality for me is that my path has just been it's meandered.
Yeah.
The one thing that has been constant for me, though, is that I have always tried to do what felt right for me.
Gotcha.
And what also kind of furthered simultaneously what was right and what helped me continue to do the things I was interested in doing.
Gotcha.
Creatively. So
yeah. Staying close to what you love, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone out there is like interested in being a program manager or a program officer or whatever the case may be, there's not like a single route to that position, as long as you stay close to the arts and involved in the arts,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Thanks for sharing, man. That's a wonderful, like, I can see the meandering you mentioned, right? Like just going through and weaving your way in, but that's awesome, man. As artists, trust me, we find ourselves in some different places sometimes, that's how it is. But that's great. I know there's a couple more minutes. We're gonna sort of wrap things up, but just wanted to give folks a last sort of opportunity before we sort of wrap up. If there's anyone that has any other questions for Kevin before we sort of call it a night. I do have some stuff I can show folks what's going up and what's coming up next week. So if folks want to check that out. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure if there's any other questions or anything for Kevin, we just get that if there is anything. Someone said, just wondering if we'll be able to view the Zoom recording. Yeah. So I started recording about the halfway point. You definitely will get the PowerPoint, and I'm happy to share the recording that I have of the Zoom. I think it started about the halfway point. So yeah, I'll definitely pass that on to everyone, but you all have been amazing. Thanks for coming out to this. I don't know if there's any other questions before we sort of do our wrap up. One last call for that, if there's anything else. Someone's asking if they'll be sent via email. Yeah, so if you registered, we'll send you an email follow-up. So the email will have the slideshow, and then we'll actually send you how to access the Zoom recording as well. So that will be sent via email. Just make sure you've registered. If you haven't registered, then we don't actually have your email address, and so you might get missed. The other way of alleviating that is just you can contact me directly. It's just Joel@SoundcheckYouth, or if you're following any of our pages on social media or whatever, you can hit us up. But we'll make sure we get things over to you folks. So just to wrap up, just a couple of things. Hang on, was there another? Okay, yeah, perfect. So one thing that you all can do for me that would be super helpful is I just put a link in the group chat. Some of y'all may have seen this survey before, some of you may not. Basically, we're doing some research. We want to do more things like this. We want to be around and be able to offer more opportunities, more workshops, more things like that. And so as actually Kevin was mentioning, it's important to get evaluations, it's important to get feedback on how, you know, how things are going. So if you'd like to see more sessions like this, if you're saying, Joel, you know, this was super dope, I want to be a part of more things like this, I just put a link there in the group chat. You can go ahead and fill out that survey. Honestly, it probably takes 5, maybe 10 minutes, if that, to do, but it goes a long way in terms of being able to help us as an organization to continue to do this work. If this is your first time interacting with Soundcheck, we're a nonprofit organization. We have been an operation since 2013. We offer a variety of music and mentorship programs. Pre-COVID, we actually were operating the very first youth-led musician community center. So we're located at 1122 Castlefield, where, you know, we are providing free access to instruments, mentors, and a great atmosphere where people can thrive. And since, with what's been going on with COVID, we've transitioned online and been doing a lot of online events, but we will be opening up our space again. So keep in touch. Once space is open, we're going to be going back to our drop-in. Folks will be able to come for jam sessions, sheds, recording stuff, all kinds of fun stuff coming up. But we do need your support to be able to continue to do stuff. So if you can simply fill out that link that I just put, that'd be great. And I'm going to put one other link, and that's just a feedback specifically on today. We always like to get feedback on, you know, on how the sessions went. Sometimes I tell the facilitator just so they could also get some feedback, because it's hard on Zoom sometimes, y'all. It's not easy because sometimes you're trying to feel out the crowd. You know, it's a different situation. So it's just always nice to hear feedback. So anyway, there's 2 links there. One, again, is just more sort of research overall, trying to figure out and do and understand what's going on in our sector as a music community. The second is just a feedback form on today. If y'all can do me a favor and fill that out. If you've already filled out the research one, don't even bother. We don't want it to double up, but if you haven't, we would appreciate that. Last but not least, I will show you all real quick what we have coming up next week. So for anyone that's may not know, we do have a session. Oh, someone was asking about my email address. Yeah, that's right. Joel@soundcheckyouth.com. That's right. So someone was asking about, the session next week. So real quickly, we are going to, I'll share my screen real quick. We're featuring one of Toronto's own, Dean Samuels. He is an entrepreneur, a music producer. He owns and runs his own studio. He's got a lot of different stuff going on. But he's going to be coming in and just sharing on the topic of entrepreneurship for musicians. So if that's something that's interesting to you, if you'd love to be a part of this session, we're going to be putting this all out on our social media. All of that will be a similar process. You can sign up. And actually, if you've already signed up from this session, we'll go ahead and send all the information out to you. So keep an eye out for that. That will be next week, Thursday, from 6:30 to 8:30. So that's happening. That's on next week. And also, some of you, I'm seeing some familiar faces. We have a Monday music program as well, if folks are interested in learning keyboards, bass, guitar, or drums. Come jump on, meet some other great musicians, and it's a great hang as well. That's on Mondays. So anyway, I think you all have our contact information. You know how to hit us up. You know where to find us. We will be following up with you in terms of the recording, as well as I mentioned, the slides from Kevin. But you all have been really great. Thank you all so much for coming out, for your patience. I think we had 17, 18 people on a Tuesday night. What day is it? Thursday. So that's great. Thank you all. Kevin, we'll see if we need to have another one of these. We'll see where things lie. But this has been great, Kevin. Thank you for your time and your openness, and just keeping it real, and letting us know how this thing works, man. We're trying to figure this out for the community. You know.
Yes. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be here. And like I said earlier, do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. Something occurs to you tomorrow, next week, whenever. Don't hesitate to reach out. So
Slideshows actually has your contact, so everyone will have access to your email, phone number, all of that. So we'll get it good. All right, people. Peace and love. It's so good to see everyone on. Y'all have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, guys. Take care, everyone.